Welcome to Time to Press Pause, real-life stories from the C-suite. I'm your host, Ellen Williams, CEO of The Salient Strategist, and today I'm speaking with Megan Steckly. Megan is CEO of CompuDopt, Inc., a nonprofit organization whose mission is to provide technology access and education to under-resourced youth and their communities. Since taking this role 9 years ago, Megan has transformed the organization, growing its budget from $230,000 to over $36 million annually, and led the strategic expansion to 24 states and 55 cities, resulting in an annual increase of individuals impacted from 700 to over 230,000. Megan is an award-winning strategist with over 15 years of experience leading high-performance teams across nonprofit education, technology, arts, and consumer product sectors in the United States, Canada, Australia, and Japan. Megan has received recognition from the U.S. Congress, 2 mayoral proclamations, and was featured on The Today Show, CNN, and AP. Megan was also honored as a 2022 Houston Business Journal 40 Under 40 honoree and serves as a senior fellow of the American Leadership Forum. Hello, Megan, and welcome to Time to Press Pause.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and appreciate the moment to speak a little bit about taking a pause.
Excellent. I love hearing about pauses and talking about pauses. So please share your press pause story with us.
Ellen, as you know, I'm the Chief Executive Officer for a national nonprofit organization called CompuDopt. And this organization was founded way back in 2007, and I joined it in 2015. And it was my very first ever CEO role in a nonprofit organization. And I was 31 and hungry and just excited about all of the opportunity in front of me. Within the first week on the job, I discovered that the organization was maybe not and had such sure footing as I had hoped, right? We were a mighty team of 3 serving about 700 students a year with free devices. And we had a $230,000 operating budget, but we only had $11,000 in the bank, and nobody had paid rent in 4 months and nobody had fundraised in 5. And so I really saw this as an opportunity to either fall flat on my face or for us to really succeed and do well. And fortunately, it's been the latter. And so with my team, the first thing that we did was go and buy a $30 tea kettle from Target because we knew we were going to need some coffee. And we pushed through and really led the organization to an immense amount of stability by 2019, where we were at that point on a $2.1 million operating budget, serving about 3,500 students per year in Houston and in Galveston. We'd started looking at other cities in Texas. I am a person that needs that challenge all the time. And I know this is something that resonates with a lot of people out there and a lot of other leaders and CEOs, right? We like to solve these problems. There was a book that I read recently that said, are you a wartime or a peacetime CEO? And I am your girl for being a wartime CEO. I want to solve these big, hairy problems. So I asked the board if we could nationalize. We have a wonderful board of directors who was incredibly supportive of our whole team and organization. And they said, why not? Let's see what this looks like. We have a unique solution to a really critical problem. Enter 2020 and the moments that shifted things for all of us for years to come with the pandemic. And what we thought was going to be kind of a slow, easy transition into nationalization. The goal for that year was to serve 45 students in other states, 3 other states. And at that point, we had about a 10-person team, turned into deploying 20,000 computers that year across 8 states and bumping our operating budget from $2.1 million to $8.1 million. Now, 4 years later, we've realized that that was just the beginning of the train. It was just gathering momentum. We'll go into 2025 with a $62 million operating budget. We will impact about 400,000 people across 55 cities and 24 states, all of that growth happening in just the last 5 years. I was incredibly proud of what we've been able to create as a team, impact that we've been able to have as a community, how critical it was to just take a breath right in the middle of that. I didn't even know how important that was until it was really kind of almost too late. By about December of 2020, I had been myself driving around the country, slinging computers out of the trunk of my car, trying to serve as many people as possible during the pandemic. And as things started to stabilize and we brought more people in to support us, and more space and capacity was created for me to sort of take a step back, I found it extraordinarily difficult to get off the merry-go-round. It was like my whole body had just gotten into this almost physical cycle of urgency. And I think this is a pattern behavior that a lot of us see in leadership, in growth, in emergency situations, and outside of them, of just building this habit of work and productivity to the point where when you're sitting still, you feel sort of inadequate or just a lot of pressure to make your time productive. I did a couple of things realizing that, like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen my friends in months. I haven't talked to people as regularly as I was speaking to people. And I'm working like 130-hour work weeks. And this isn't sustainable, healthy for my body, healthy for my mind, or for anyone around me. And I did a couple of things to take a pause. Number one, I found a therapist. That was an incredibly helpful thing in just reframing like why I was maybe feeling that sense of urgency and how I could let go of some of the control that I felt like I needed to have. And the second thing was I decided to take a drawing class. And I am not an artist. The most I had ever done was kind of like some doodling on, the corners of notebook paper. But I took an online drawing class that was on Thursday nights from 6:30 to 8:30. And it was taught by this woman who is an artist living in LA, Allie Wallace. And I made a commitment to myself that for that 2-hour block in a week, I could do nothing but sit there and learn how to draw. And it was enough mental stimulation that it kept work off of my mind. And it was enough creative that it relaxed and probably reset some of my nervous system and re-regulated that to a point where I could breathe and relax and practice in a way, taking a pause. And the third thing I did was I hired a COO and then took like 5 weeks off. It was sort of terrifying to do that. I had lots of anxiety going into it, but at the same time, I think the growth that we've been able to see since 2020 would not have happened if I had not taken a pause and figured out how to slow down and reset and come back to myself. I think a critical piece of great leadership is being able to recognize when the momentum of your organization that you've built needs you to take a step back and make sure that you're securing your mask before helping others, that you're taking care of yourself, and then finding your way back to what needs to happen next.
Okay, you definitely gave a lot of information there. First and foremost, amazing on the achievements that you outlined. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I would love for you to clarify when exactly you took your pause, because I was anticipating it might have been right when you started because you went out and got the kettle for coffee. Was that a pause? It sounds like this bigger pause where you hired the COO was later on. So can you clarify? Did I get two little pause stories there?
You probably did. I've never actually thought about that tea kettle as being a pause moment, but I think you're absolutely right. Pauses don't have to look like monumental, sabbaticals or 5 weeks off or hiring a COO or therapy. They can absolutely look like a cup of coffee. And so, yes, that's probably pause number one, assessing where I was at and making that happen.
Excellent. Thank you for that clarity. So you hired the COO, you took the break. Obviously, that was now we know 2021. You've talked about the success that the organization has had since then. What changes did you make personally when you came back from vacation so that you wouldn't get caught in that same 138-hour week?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And, I think that I'm a control freak by nature, right? That is where I feel best is when I get to make all of the decisions. And I think learning how to let that go and also bring on a stronger executive team and go ahead and divide out the portions of responsibility that I had and that my team was also carrying a burden for, and just make sure that we had an adequate number of staff resource to meet the needs. And for me to let go of some of that control and relax about what the journey needs to look like, and be more focused on like, yeah, but we care about the community being served with excellence, and so if that's happening, I it doesn't matter to me how we get there. So hiring a stronger executive leadership team was a big piece of coming back from that and being motivated to get that done. And then as off brand as it felt for me at the time, I got into yoga, right? And now, as of March of this year, I'm a freshly minted yoga teacher who hopefully like won't teach outside of like vacations with my friends. But it was a way to make sure that I had dedicated time in the week that was about getting out of my head and into my body, and also getting out of the office so I could break the habit of just like continuously working forever into the evening.
That sounds like you made some really big changes compared to how you explained who you were prior, and now all of the things you've adopted to give yourself that breathing room and time. A lot of what you've talked about has been time for you to reconnect with yourself, right? Get out of your head and get into your
Mhm.
body, as you said, which I love that phrasing. Has it also enabled you to have a better opportunity to think things through at work as well?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I could have said it better myself. Taking a pause, taking a breath, reconnecting with yourself, reconnecting with your core values, however that shows up for you. I think it allows you to respond more often than react. And that's not to say that I am by any means perfect, right? There's still certainly situations where my instinctual response comes before I've had a breath to consider. Taking the pause and implementing some of these strategies that do center me absolutely has it's improved my relationships with my team. It's allowed me to be more considered about the future. I think it's also allowed space for different leadership voices to be better heard within our organization. I am an instinctual fast decision maker. Things feel true to me and I'm happy to move forward with them, and our organization starts at yes, right? We're big on kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. But as a result of connecting better with myself, I think my team members that are more processors, right, that need a little bit more time to think before they feel comfortable going ahead and voicing a decision, because I was calmer and more thoughtful and more considered in how I've approached leadership since this period of time. They've had room to bring their own views to the table, and it's really positively shaped and influenced how, as a whole organization, we've moved forward. And I think a lot of our success and our infrastructure reinforcement, that kind of thing, spaces where it's not necessarily my go-to strength, have been stronger as a result of their voices being better heard.
That's a great result. And I love the phrase different leadership voices were heard. I think that's very impactful as a leader and certainly for the organization. I also appreciate that you identified some of them as processors because, yeah, totally. I am not a rush to decision. I am a processor for sure. I also appreciated the you respond instead of react. And I think that's an important trait in a leader as well. So thank you for all of that. So my last question for you is, what advice would you give other leaders as to when they should identify it's time to press pause?
My internal litmus test has sort of evolved into how am I feeling 70% of the time in the course of 1 week, right? And if I am feeling good, healthy, dug in, and I love it, then I end the week feeling like I'm in a pretty strong, healthy place. And I say 70% because the 100% weeks are too much perfection driven, right? And too ripe for failure. But if 70% of the time I'm feeling really pretty good about where I'm at, then I'm probably in a good space. As soon as I feel like that 70% is anything less than, right, where I notice fatigue, short-tempered, communication, where I'm reflecting at the end of the day going like, oh, I wish I would have handled that conversation differently. If that's happening at a higher level of frequency week over week, that's usually a flag for me that it's time to figure out what kind of space I need. And I think another piece of advice, right, that I would offer around that is just to remind people, to your comment, right, that a break doesn't have to look like many days off. It really can look like, I think tomorrow I'm going to start the day at 10 instead of 9, and just remind myself not all of life is about work. I am not only what I do or the impact that I make in the community, but that I have to feel good about me as a whole person in order to do the best job I can at these things that I value and that are important to me across the community or across my professional life or my personal life, et cetera, et cetera. So as soon as you see those flags raising, figuring out what kind of break you need, how long that needs to be. And sometimes even that exercise alone is enough to go, okay, yep, I'm ready for what's next.
That's a great reminder. Not all of life is about work.
Yeah. It's easy to get sucked into that, right? Yeah.
Certainly at the CEO leadership level, because I totally agree that one key element to a good leader is drive. And sometimes that does take over.
I so appreciate what you just said about drive, right? Because I think that one of the things that we get caught up in is there's so much positive reinforcement for success and for growth and for urgency and for pushing that it can really reinforce that cycle. That if you're in your head, you're going, oh my gosh, I'm just so tired. But at the same time, somebody's giving you a raise and saying, maybe not directly, but do more. That's a thing that we internalize. And instead of having that be motivating and move us forward, it can feel so heavy and exhausting. And that's just another thing to recognize, is that just because you're getting positive affirmation for the success that you're having does not mean that you are not deserving of, worthy of, or wouldn't benefit from a pause.
Deserving of, worthy of a pause. I think that's an awesome way to end the podcast. And I appreciate your advice. I love that you shared some really in-depth information about your Press Pause story, and appreciate you being here today on Time to Press Pause.
Thank you, Ellen. I appreciate it too.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Time to Press Pause. If you'd like to learn more about Megan, go to CompuDopt.com. That's CompuDopt.com. If you'd like to learn more about me, go to thesalientstrategist.com. And please join us again wherever you listen to your podcasts.